people always ask me, like, what was the difference between Tampa and Colorado or whatever? And I just, like, going to Colorado, like, in Calgary, you're trying to make the playoffs. That was your goal, right? Our goal is to make the playoffs. In Colorado, your goal is to win the cup. And that's what it was. That was your goal, was to win the Stanley Cup. And it was unbelievable going there. Just that we're going to win the cup, and that's anything less is unacceptable. And I just love that. And then we traded for Ray the first year, and then we lost in 7 games to Dallas. And then the next year it was, we're going to finish first overall. So if we have a game 7, it's in our building. Anything less is unacceptable. And it was like the whole season was about winning, and it was unbelievable. It was just awesome. And it wasn't like there was a ton of pressure. It was just all about winning. And everything was like, win one for Ray. And Ray was like, don't win one for me. He's like, screw that. You win it for yourself, because my name will be right next to yours. So
that was former first rounder, 19th overall selection to the Calgary Flames, and 2-time Stanley Cup champion Chris Dingman. And you're listening to the Up My Hockey Podcast with Jason Podolin. Just watch me now. Welcome to Up My Hockey with Jason Podolin, where we deconstruct the N.H.L. journey, discuss what it takes to make it, and have a few laughs along the way. I'm your host, Jason Podolin, a 31st overall draft pick who played 41 N.H.L. games, but thought he was destined for 1,000. Learn from my story and those of my guests. This is a hockey podcast about reaching your potential. Hello and welcome back to the Up My Hockey Podcast with Jason Podolin. I am your host, Jason Podolin, and this is episode number 69. And today we have on a special guest by the name of Chris Dingman. Chris and I, born same birth year, back in 76, so we saw a lot of each other in the junior hockey ranks, and in our draft year, Chris went 19th overall, I went 31st. So we were at many of the same events and the same combines. We ended up going head-to-head in the playoffs, in the finals, WHL finals, both of our respective last years, and then saw a little bit of each other in pro. So it was great to catch up with Dinger, a man who went on to win 2 Stanley Cup championships, one with Colorado Avalanche and one with the Tampa Bay Lightning. So it was surrounded by some amazing players on obviously both those teams, by the likes of Martin St.Louis and Vincent Lecavalier and Brad Richards and Habby Boulin and Joe Sakic and Rob Blake and Ray Bourque, and my goodness, right? The Hall of Famers go on and on and on. So super cool to catch up with him, to talk about his journey, to talk about his arrival into the NHL, that it wasn't, an easy road. You've heard that on this podcast many times. We dig into that here a little bit today. Chris, being a first rounder, 19th overall, didn't get a sniff out of training camp, was already been told he was kind of washed up in the media. If you can imagine that, at 20 years old, spent an entire season down in the minors where he wasn't getting a chance to play, was not getting an opportunity, ran into a coach that he didn't like. What do you do, right? What do you do? These are the things that the spots on the road map, that athletes just aren't ready for. And I know a lot of listeners here are parents, minor hockey parents, or parents of junior players, and the athletes themselves. And you never plan for adversity, right? We never think that something bad, let's say in quotes, is going to happen to us. But things do happen. And I talked to Chris about that in his first year there, not being able to get on the ice, a first-round draft pick, already signed this big bonus and expecting big things, and now he can barely even find a spot in the lineup down in the minors. You need to be prepared for these types of things, and we chronicle his trade and his move and all these other things, and he tells a lot of great stories along the way. We do have a few technical issues. I don't believe there was a bit of a delay. I tried to do my best to let that delay just happen, so there wasn't too much back and forth, banter in this one. But Chris does tell some great stories, and we run into a small time, maybe a minute or two, where I couldn't hear myself or him, and we had to reconstruct that. So bear with a little bit of the tech. There's not too much here. Chris is well worth listening to. Got a lot of great stories, and lots to learn from his journey. So without further ado, I bring you Chris Dingman. All right, we are live for episode 69 of the Up My Hockey podcast with Chris Dingman. Chris Dingman. Dinger, thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, no problem. It's funny. Episode 69, when I went to junior, I was allowed to request 3 numbers, and the first one was 11. Second one was 22, and the third one was 69. And Kelly McCrimmon and I had to talk about it years later about what the are you thinking? I was like, I don't know, just have a little fun. I knew I knew I was going to get whatever number he was going to give me, but I thought I'd have a little fun with it. And then Bobby, him and Bobby Lowe's, my coach, kind of gave me the lay of the land there. So kind of knew going.
You wore 11, right?
But 22.
Oh, you were 22. Who had 11?
22. Oh God, I don't even remember.
Was that Dubinsky?
No, I think Dubber was. Kluche was 24. Dubber was 16, 19. Who was 11?
19,
Jeff Hode.
yeah.
I think Jeff Hode was 11.
Gotcha.
I believe. No, Mark Kolsar. That's what it was.
Did you ever get, speaking of numbers, I never had this conversation before, did you ever get to a spot, I know you played a hell of a lot more NHL games than me, but were you ever able to pick your number at the NHL level?
No. No, when you go to camp and you get a number, it's different now because all the numbers are, all over the place. But back in the day, it was like if you had a lower number, you had a good chance of making the team. And if you were like in the 50s or something, then you really had no chance. So I remember in Calgary, I get 7, and Derek Morris had 53, and we were in the hotel for like a month or 2 or something during the season. And so they finally call us in, Bourque, PR guy or whatever, he calls us in, and he's like, yeah, you guys can get places now or whatever. They tell you can move out of the hotel. So
I don't know that, but I've heard people get to hear that sometimes.
So, so I was like, all right, yeah, great. And it was like, so, yeah, if you guys want to change your number, he was talking to Derek Morris. He's like, that's more of a training camp number. If you want a different number, we can, get that. You can get a different number and look at what's available. And Mo was like, nope, I made the team with this number, and I'm good. And I was kind of like, put my hand up a little bit, like, hey, I had 7, Gary Roberts' old number, and I was like, hey, would it be possible? And it was like, no. I was like, okay, thanks, because it just 7 looked weird. I'm kind of a large person, so I have a double-digit number, I feel, anyways, to fill me out or fill out the back of the jersey. But yeah, that was my first request, and then I got lucky when I went to Colorado. I got 11, and then when I went to Tampa, they gave me 11. Then I went to Carolina. There was a guy by the name of Jeff Daniels. He's still the assistant coach, I believe, and he had 11. And there was no chance he was giving. I didn't even ask him. They gave me 19. I was like, oh, okay, 19 could be, but yeah, it wasn't. 19 wasn't any more better for me. Right. It wasn't luckier. So yeah, no choosing numbers. Even in Sweden, I got a 22, and there was a guy when I went to Södertälje, and this guy wasn't giving up his number either. So I just went with 44. So
44, sweet.
Yeah, double.
Yeah, I got in Florida. They gave me 17, like without, again, not asking me, but they knew that I wore that all through junior. So they gave me 17. So that was really cool. And then when I got traded to Toronto, a guy by the name of Wendell Clark was wearing 17. So I don't think that was going to change. But they gave me 7, like without asking. So I wore 7 too. And I had no idea at the time, which really I'm kind of not very happy about myself with, just like the history of the Leafs. So like that number like was an iconic number in the Leaf history, like to get to wear that number, like Lanny McDonald wore that number and like some other names. And so that was actually quite a statement for them to give me that number. But I didn't like it either. I didn't really like the 7, to be honest. But anyways, numbers are a funny thing. Some guys live and die by them.
Yeah. A lot of pressure. Well, a lot of pressure too when you wear a number like that. So I don't know. I was always a double digit. I don't know why. I think it's because I was never nowhere. Well, not that anyone really is, but Wayne Gretzky's 99. Growing up at Edmonton, there's Gretzky, but I liked Mark Messier because he was skilled, but he was still tough, and I like that side of it. So 11 was, kind of the number. So I like the double digits, but back in the day, there was none of the high numbers there are now, and especially playing in traditional like in Brandon. Like with Kelly McCrimmon, there was no getting 44 or 55 or any of those numbers. Right. It was like, nope, shut your mouth. This is what you're getting.
Was Moose your guy? Was Mark Messier your guy? Was that who you tried to emulate?
Yeah, he was. I loved him. Like Dave Semenko too, obviously. But the Gretzky was a great player. I like the physical side of it. I liked hitting people. And, you watch the old videos now, and some of the things he did, and some of the elbows, like when he elbowed Modano and stuff. Like he was he was mean, but back then you had to protect yourself. There's the old like Gordie Howe, like you had to eat an elbow if you wanted to hit me or go through my stick. I remember Craig Ramsey, my assistant coach at Tampa, would say that. He's like, I wasn't the biggest guy, Dinger, but if you were going to hit me, you had to go through this. And he'd have his stick up, his old Sherwood, it was 20 pounds. And the guy was only like 150 pounds soaking wet rammer, but you couldn't get the puck away from him. We played one-on-one or keep away, and he was so strong. But just, those back then, I just like I like the physical aspect of it, but you had to protect yourself. And Messier was one of those guys. He would fight too. I love watching the old videos, like the Battle of Alberta and stuff. And then like Messier fought Marty McSorley because McSorley was all over him. And Messier would get mad, turn around and cross check. I mean, he'd fight him, and you'd do okay for a while. But it's like, why? Like if I'm a GM or I'm a coach, well, I don't want Mark Messier fighting Marty McSorley. I mean, that's like, forget that. Like, yeah, I would have 3 guys going over the boards. But I just respected that. I like that style of play that he played, and that he was skilled and he could hit and he could fight if need be. And he was mean too. I was lucky or unlucky enough to play against him, but I hit him and it was kind of like, oh, sorry, Mr. Messier. Like it was one of those. And even Gretzky too. Like it was like I scored a goal against him one time. It was my 3rd goal of the season. I hadn't scored in 3 months, and I was like, he had wanted no part of playing defense. He was in New York at the time, and I was so pumped I scored a goal. And all the boys were like, yeah, because it's Madison Square Gardens. And I get a wraparound. I get on Mike Richter. I get the rebound. I go bar down. And I'm just like, woo. And the boys are all pumped. And, Messier and Gretzky couldn't give 2, whatever. And get back to the bench with Brian Sutter. My number 7 was, it's about effing time, Dinger. And I was like, couldn't let me enjoy it just a little bit. You couldn't let me. Whatever. It was a different time. It was, coaching's a little different now, and so is the game. So,
yeah, no kidding. Who do you think is the Mark Messier? Actually, you know what? Before I ask that question, do you hear that story when I think he was a rookie, Messier, when he went to the wrong airport?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and so for those listening, I heard Mark tell this. Mark, like I know him, Messier tell this story, and it was ridiculously awesome. Shows up at the wrong airport, ends up making a call to the team or whatever, like, hey, I'm at the wrong airport, and they're like, oh yeah, well that's okay, just show up, wherever they're supposed to go, and be ready. So anyways, he goes to the right airport, and the ticket is to the minors. So he misses the team flight and he has to go to the minors. I guess he was there for like 5 days and then came back, but he said it was one of the biggest wake-up calls ever. I thought that was pretty classic move by the Oilers there. But who do you think in the game today? Like, is there anyone that plays like Messier now?
I don't know if there's any like Paul Wilson with the Capitals. Mark Messier is Mark Messier, but look at a guy like him. He can play on your top lines, and he's a skilled guy. He can shoot, he can pass, and he can hit, and he can fight. So, top of my head, he's a guy. Lucic was, Lucic has gotten a little older, but I think he was a guy too that could, it's hard to compare. I'm just trying to think for other guys, but Anderson's got a little bit of that in Montreal, the bigger guy, a bit of a mean streak.
Fewer and farther between though now, right? I mean, that's why they stand out like a sore thumb. Those guys are real valuable, and you see it now, like in the playoffs when it's heavy. Like it's a little bit heavier. These guys are coming out of character. Some of these guys are having to hit and get hit more than they're used to, and it looks a lot different out there. The game, I love watching the playoffs. It's kind of hockey I like to watch too.
Well, even just the Islanders, watching them, like Tampa's, like they're a skilled team, but they have Maroon. They got some physical guys, and that game was awesome. Like it was great because it was just the physicality of it is. I enjoy that. I really enjoy that. A lot of people don't, but I enjoy that about the playoffs where, everyone's talking about interference and penalties and stuff. And, refs are refs. Like, they're human beings. I remember, like, I was in Carolina at the time, and you remember the referee from the dub, Mike Hasenfratz? And he
of course.
Yeah, so Hazy. So
he cost us Game 7 in Tri-City, speaking of refs making mistakes. We scored in overtime. I got to go back there. We score in overtime against Tri-Cities, battled back from 3-1. The puck, Sean Gillum skates. I pass the puck to Gilly. Gilly shoots it from the point, goes off their defenseman in front into the net. Hasenfratz says John Serjak kicked it in somehow on the way to the net. Denies the goal. Terry Ryan scores 7 minutes later, and we're out of the playoffs. So, anyways, I definitely remember Hasenfratz. And Terry and I have had that conversation a few times. But, anyways, your turn with Hasenfratz.
He didn't. I guess he didn't screw me over. Cost me that I know of anyways, but I was with my wife and we were at PF Chang's. We were sitting at the bar, and it was after a game, and we're just having a few drinks and just eating, having what did I like there? The bang bang shrimp, I think it was. It was unbelievable. Like I had to eat every time. Anyways, so my wife and I are sitting there, and I look over, and it's Mike Hassenfratz. He's like, Digger. And I said, yeah. He goes, oh, how's he? And I was like, oh, hey. So anyways, we start talking for a couple hours, and I think he's drinking Diet Cokes or Cokes, and he's drinking, something a little harder with a splash of, and I'm just having my Coors Lights or Bud Light drops or whatever. And we were talking, he was telling stories, and he was telling me the story. And I always tell the story because I just enjoy it so much. And he's like, you remember that game? He was against Moose Jaw or Medicine Hat. He's like, you remember that game? And I was like, I don't know, not really. It's like with my brain and concussions. Like I can remember certain things, and then other things I can't. And then, people say something, I go, oh, okay, I remember that now. But he was telling the story about, there was this guy, and he started a bunch of crap, right, in the game, a bunch of shit or whatever. And the guy was like, so then it was like line brawl, back in the day, like the skilled guys would fight the skilled guys and the heavyweights for the most part, right? And he's like, so this guy that starts everything, and he's like, as a ref, he goes, I understand. You get mad, you can tell me to F off, tell me I suck, whatever. But he's like, there's 2 words you can't call me. The 2 C words, and I'm not going to say them, but I'm pretty sure we can all figure it out, right? And he's like, you call me that, like, you're gone. Other than that, you can tell me to go F myself, whatever. He's like, I get it. You're passionate. You guys are, in the heat of the moment. But he's like, so this guy that started everything, like every whistle, he's calling me, you know what, sucker, blah, 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 blank this, blank that. And he said to the guy, he goes, you can call me you know what, as many times you want. He's like, I'm not kicking you out. You're going to answer the bell because you started all this. So the guy that started all this shit, all the brawls and stuff, hadn't fought yet. And he's like, you're answering the bell. I'm not getting, like, his point was, I'm not going to give you the easy way out. So the guy was like, just F-bombing him every whistle, calling him, the C word. He's like, you can call me that all you want. I'm not kicking you out, because the guy wanted, 2 and a 10.
Right.
And he just wanted to get kicked out so you didn't have to fight. He's like, no, you're answering the bell. And I still remember that to this day, because, when we were in Tampa too, like Koharski was there, and, Torts hated him for calling. Corey Sarge, he hated him too. But, like referees they're human beings. They make mistakes. I mean, everyone's on them. Like we're all passionate or whatever, but they know when they, like, I've talked to a few guys, they know when they make a mistake, and they'll try and make up for it, whether it's right or wrong. We watch games, and, it's like, you remember Jeff Hodge tell me, like, if we had 3 power plays, he's like, don't touch anybody because they're looking to call something. So don't even put a stick on anybody. And he wouldn't, because they were, you just naturally, they would. And then remember Dave Anderchuk would say too, like, they have 6 marbles in each pocket, the officials. And they call a penalty on one side, they pull it out. Okay. And then they pull it out of the other side, or they pull 2 out. And he's like, it's usually about 6-6 or 6-5. And, because they really don't want to just, like, determine games for the most part. Like, They don't want to. There's the odd guy. There's 1 or 2, I'm not going to say, but, most of them, they want to be part of the game and not be a storyline. I think it would be the best part. But I just go back to those couple stories about that Hasenfratz story. It was you can call me whatever, no matter. I'm not kicking you out. I'm not kicking you out. And I love that, because there was that accountability where, there's not as much as that anymore, where, you can run your mouth and say this and say that. And, back then you get your head taken off, or someone would try, you'd have to fight, and you'd have to take a beating, or you'd change the way you played. So I just really enjoyed that story as far as appreciating. Sorry he screwed you over.
I know, I'll never forget it. But that's life. That's the way she goes. Actually, another good referee from the dub, Tom Cowell. I don't even remember that name. He refed in the N.H.L. forever.
Yeah.
Excuse me. I had him on as a guest, and it was actually one of my favorite interviews, like, to hear the game from their perspective, right? And again, their preparation and their approach, and how they consider themselves as a team. With the 3 or 4 of them on the ice. It was really quite compelling. And then it was also quite sad too, for the parents and players out there listening, like, and how hard it is to bring new refs into the game because of how they're treated. At such a young level, right? Like, and again, I think you said it, 99% of them are just trying to do their best. They don't want to be the star of the show, and it is what it is. You're going to see mistakes. And I think there's a little lack of empathy in that scenario, especially when we're dealing at the youth hockey levels. But good episode for anyone who is interested in that, because I think it does develop a little bit of empathy and a little bit of understanding that, we need these guys, right, for the game to be great, and we need these guys for the game to grow. And if we can't attract young referees, that says something about the culture with what we're creating. So, anyways, neither here nor there. I want to talk about the Cups. I want to talk about Brandon because that was a fun time. And when we crossed paths in that time, even though you were in the East, and my gosh, I'm sure that West trip must have, I don't know, did you guys like look on the West trip as like something like that was looked forward to? Like it was always interesting for us from the West, but it was, I mean, obviously way different cities coming out East.
Yeah.
You know, and that whole environment was not necessarily a huge highlight every year. Did you guys like look forward to coming West, or was it a little bit of drudgery too?
Oh no, you guys were coddled out West. You guys had the easy bus trips, and you had the nicer arenas, and you had oh yeah, you guys were coddled. That was our perception, anyways. Like you guys were like, you had an hour, 2 hour bus ride and whatever, and it was a piece of cake. And then us, like in Brandon, I think our closest trip was like 3.5 hours in Regina or something. So, we felt like we were the ones that paid our dues. Like I remember when people say, "Oh my God, you played hockey, you played junior, it was easy." How hard was it? I'm like, try ride a bus for 8 hours. You stop at a rink in the middle of nowhere and you eat roast beef and potatoes or something, or mashed potatoes, and the people are the nicest people, and it's ready for you. Just small town people. Then you get back on the bus, and then you get to the arena. And then if like my first year, I sat in a seat, and my seatmate was Darren Dreger. So Dregs, the insider, Dregs was our radio guy. And the poor guy, poor bastard, he's stuffed up against the window because he's got to sit next to me as a rookie at 6'3", 226 or whatever. And so he's like, "Oh my God, I had no room," and I'm like trying to sleep, and I'm sitting there because you didn't get a bunk. We had that old bus, and they had the bunks in the back, and unless there wasn't a lot of veterans, you didn't get a bunk till your second year and whatever. So, anyways, we consider we paid our dues, and the West Coast trip, we get the T-shirts made up, and it was a big deal. Going to Portland and stuff, 16,000 people, and so I remember like the one trip. Though I was hurt, I think my 17-year-old year, I was hurt. I had a knee injury or something, or I had a couple bad quad contusions, so I didn't make the trip. But I remember like it was my third year or fourth year, and I don't remember which one, but I remember we go to Seattle and we played in the smaller barn. Remember like the tiny one, right?
Yeah,
The
the
fans were on
soapbox,
top.
man.
Oh my God! And then something happened. Like, so we get in a brawl, and I think I had like knocked out like a couple guys. And then the ref tackles me, and someone throws a fish at me. Like I'm like my face on the ice, and the fish like lands like right next to my face, and I'm like pick it up and I'm swinging it. I'm skating off. There's video of it. I'm skating off the ice, and I'm giving the double bird to the fans, which I'm not very proud of, but I was kind of passionate. Let's say passionate back then. And no suspension or nothing. Like now, you can't do that stuff. But it's so absurd, but it's kind of funny. So then, we have a good trip. I think that trip we played 7 games or something in 13 days, and so the last we're 5-1, I think, or something like that. We looked at it, if you could go 500, it was a good trip. Like, you know what I mean? Because you go out and like whatever, it's a long bus ride. But so the rule was of Bobby Lowe's is if you lost, there was no movies after the game. So that was our incentive. So we're 5-1, and our last game is in Portland, and it's rocking like 16,000. Like they come out to. It was Symphony of Destruction, right? Wasn't it?
Probably. Yeah, I don't remember, but yeah.
Oh, place is rocking, and so I scored the first goal, and like we're all right, 1-0. Well, they pumped 10 straight on us, and like we're at the end of the trip, and by the time it's 4-1 or something, I'm like I get in a fight, and it's 5-1. So I get another fight. I'm just trying to get kicked out because I'm like just done, right? Get some pims, and I was mad. So anyways, lose 10-1, and our rule is no movies after a loss. But we're thinking, okay, hey, Losey, we watch a movie. He's like, no, F off. So we think, okay, so we got to go to bed, right? But then we got to wake up the next day because it's a 27-hour bus ride back. So we think, maybe the next day we watch the movies. We're like, okay, who's going to ask him? Losey, can we watch movies? And he's like, F off. No. So we went 27 hours. We stopped in, I think it was like Medicine Hat or something. They had the veal cutlets with the squiggly fries with the gravy. Oh my gosh, so good. So we literally got off the bus. We ate. We got 3 hotel rooms so guys could shower. The vets would shower first. You had a 5-minute shower because it just stunk so bad. Like after 13 days on the road. So yeah, that was. We looked at the West Coast trip as like it was cool because you got to see these big arenas and U.S. cities and go shopping and stuff. But yeah, we consider ourselves the gritty ones, and you guys were like the soft ones out west because you get the nice buildings and the travel wasn't that far. So, but yeah, it was a fun trip. We had the T-shirts made. I remember like the one year, like Bobby Brown, I don't know if you remember that name, we nicknamed him the Greasy Squirrel after that trip because he had the bottom bunk, and literally everyone would throw their garbage on the ground, or not everyone, but a lot of guys. So there was like by the end of the trip, there was like Ziploc bags, half-eaten sandwiches, and like just all in his bunk, and it was just like, oh, he'd roll out of there, and, like, hey, how you doing? He just you know what I mean, just like greasy. Had the same tank top on the whole trip, I think, or he had two. They looked the same. So yeah, it was a fun bonding experience for us, or that's the way we looked
No,
at it.
for
Anyways.
sure. For sure. I mean, there's something to be said for that time on the bus, you know, and you know, the guys in the OHL definitely don't experience that, you know, like we did. You know, you mentioned, I mean, I totally hear what you're saying. We did have like our buildings out west. I mean, it was like you're playing pro a lot of times, especially on the weekends, right? You mean 15, 16, 17,000 people. But our travel wasn't good. I mean, our closest trip was 2.5 hours to try. And then it was Seattle, which was 5.5 or whatever, was our second closest in Spokane. And as you know, like, I mean, and everyone listening, that was, you know, those are day trips back in the day, right? I mean, you're leaving after school, or I mean, you go to school in the morning, leave, and then come back that night and supposed to go to school the next day. And like I say, when you're a rookie and you're up at the front there with, you know, double breasted, you're not having an easy time sleeping or getting comfy. And that's funny you guys stopped in Medicine Hat. That's exactly what we did, because Brandon was always at the end of our trip. So we would leave from Brandon for whatever it was. Yeah, like the 24 or 21 hours or 26-hour trip home, and we'd stop in Medicine Hat. That'd be the one time we'd get off the bus to eat and then get back on. And I remember by like rolling into Spokane, like, guys, you're just delirious. You're just dumb. I mean, you're just dumb. You're emotional. Like, I remember Hugh Hamilton, like, seriously breaking down into tears one trip coming back, like, over some like joke that I thought was funny, but it wasn't at the time because we were on the bus for 27 hours straight after 2 weeks in the road. So yeah, anyway, some crazy stuff. But yeah, you had, maybe let's talk about that. Maybe, instead of starting at your 16-year-old, maybe we'll start in that draft year, because you know, those who aren't familiar with you, you're a first rounder, 19th overall in that 94 draft. And that is playing 45 games. And we're injured. I mean, you had a good 45 games, 21 goals, you know, 41 points, 77 PIMs. How was that year for you? How did you deal with whatever the injury was? And yeah, was that a big pain in your butt? Were you freaking out because you were injured, or how did that all go for you?
I don't remember too much, to be honest. Like, I kept getting bad quad contusions. I had, like, the pants we had, they kept moving. So every time I was a bigger guy, and it felt like every time I hit somebody, I just run guys as hard as I could. There wasn't like angling or any of that. Plus, Kelly McCrimmon, he'd say his big thing was, well, Dinger, you couldn't turn. And then
I think you put yourself on mute because I can't hear you now.
Yeah, there you go. Sorry. The central scouting on me was when I turned, I took out the first 5 rows, which I thought was a little mean, but whatever. Anyways, I kept getting these really bad quad contusions, and so I was missing games. I come back, and it really, like, I couldn't even bend my knee, and so I don't remember much about the draft year. And like, it was just like, it was projected to be a second round or maybe something like that. And I just remember talking to Calgary, and I did one like a psych eval with them. And I did, like, I was looking at these paint blotches and stuff, and then I was doing this A1, B2, C3, like a zigzag thing. And now you do it, and then you put the headphones on. And the headphones were telling you to do something different. So I started twice, and I stopped. They said, what do you want me to do, listen to the headphones or do the A1, B2, C3? And they're like, do the A1, the headphones are to distract you. I was like, okay. So then they ask you all these different questions and stuff like that. And so the feedback was, they said, when you did that A1, B2, it took you the third time when you finally did it, but it was the fastest time out of anyone we've tested. I was like, okay, cool, thanks. And then they, like, when they were showing the paint blotches and stuff, like, I was going into specific detail about, you know, it's just like, it's just an ink stain. Just, he's like, well, here's what someone else said. This is a circle and this is a triangle or something like that. And I'm like, I see like a little house over here and it looks like a little chief and then this and that. So it was interesting to get the feedback, but, you know, I didn't really know. But anyway, so after the draft, you know, I get drafted by Calgary, and I found out after that Dallas had me picked, and that if Calgary would have picked me, Dallas would have picked me 20th. But anyways, I was talking to the head scout at the time, Tom Thompson and Doug Reisbaugh, great people. And Tom Thompson was like very funny about it. He goes, we talked to you that one time, and he said, we didn't want anyone to know that we were interested in you, so we didn't talk to you again. And I was like, yeah, I didn't know. Like, you guys, like, I remember flying out to Quebec City, Sherry Bassett, and we went for dinner and stuff. New Jersey, we were on the treadmill doing all the stuff, doing the testing, but like just during the season, I don't really remember that much. I just remember I started playing right wing, and I never really played right wing, and it was funny. So Tom Thompson said, he goes, you're injured. And he goes, you came back and you're playing right wing, and he goes, you're total dog, dog crap. And he's like, it was perfect because we knew we wanted you, and we already knew what we thought. And he's like, and you look like crap. So he's like, it was perfect for us. And it was interesting, like at the time I was kind of struggling a little bit because I never really played my off wing. I'd always played center, left wing, but left wing primarily, obviously in the Western League. But the way they were looking at it is that, they kind of knew I was their guy, I guess. And, we don't know how things turn out later on in life or whatever, but it was interesting that, I was struggling and he loved it because, they wanted me. So it's like, it's perfect because no one else really was like, yeah, because you're struggling so bad. So yeah, I didn't really know much other than that, other than going in the draft with Donnie Meehan and, here's where we're kind of projecting you, but it was all kind of a blur, like you do some.
Well, how was that though? I mean, it sounds
just
like
playing.
From earlier, you said your expectation maybe was around second round, and then you end up going 19th. Like, was that what you were expecting? Like, it must have been pretty euphoric to hear your name called at 19.
Yeah, it was great. I don't know, like, they just like, here's where you kind of don't be disappointed if you don't get taken in the first round. I was like, oh, sure, it's great, no matter what. Like, but I just remember the you do the interviews at the draft. So it was in Hartford, which was like, Hartford was a ghost town downtown.
Oh my gosh, it was so dead.
I remember doing the interviews and stuff. Oh, yeah. So we're doing the interviews, and I remember doing an interview with Paul Holmgren, and Paul Holmgren like shook my hand, and it was literally like he had another knuckle tied onto my hand. So like he shook my hand, he almost crushed my hand, and I was like, oh my God, he had the crew cut, and he was still like muscular. He's like, hi, Chris. And I was like, hi, Mr. Holmgren. Like, nice to meet you, whatever. And all everyone wanted to ask me about was me and Belak fighting. And that was like the big thing. So we fought Belak a few times. I was like, yeah. And they're like, oh, how'd that go? And I said, well, I don't know. I think it went okay. Like who won? And I said, well, I don't know if you consider anybody really winning those ones. And I just remember the one fight, Beeler, God rest his soul. But I remember the one fight, Saskatoon, where the second fight, my buddies had driven 8 hours to watch me play. And I made about 5 minutes into the game, and I remember like he cut me for 6, and then I broke his nose. And I got up, and everyone was cheering, and I remember pointing because I was bleeding everywhere. And we had talked about it at the draft, Beeler. So Beeler and Warner and Warren, a bunch of the guys. So I remember talking to Belak after. He's like, you hit me with that hammer fist and broke my nose. Because he almost knocked me out. He hit me. He switched to lefts, and I was like, whoa! It took a couple, went back, but it was interesting. All he wanted to talk about was our fights. Like, oh, how's the fights with Belak? And I was like, who won? I said, well, I won one of them for sure. The other one, maybe. And I said, the other one's, I didn't get the crap kicked out of me. So I considered that a victory. So they just wanted to hear your responses, I guess. But it was intimidating as hell. Like, just you're going into these different suites, hotel rooms, and like guys you grew up watching, and you got to go sit down. You're in your tip-top tailor suit and your ugly tie, your 1 or 2 ties you had from junior that was like flower pastel or something, and just intimidating. Like, just, oh my God, I don't know how I did it. Like, I don't know how I made it through without like peeing my pants or something, because it was just, some of those guys were just like, because some of them would say hi and then they just sit there, and like you like, and it was all, then you hear these things after, oh, they're testing you, and I don't know testing you for, but how you respond or how you whatever. It's just, yeah. It was fun. It was a little scary. It was fun, but when it was over, I was like, "Whew, thank God that's over with."
Hey there, just want to let you know about everything Up My Hockey. This podcast goes live on the Up My Hockey parent group on Facebook. It's a private group where you can request access. If you are a parent supporting big dreams of your athlete, and that's where you get to hear me talk about mindset and the intangibles required to be the best on the ice and how you can support your player off the ice. So that's a great place to sign up and to listen into the podcast. You can also subscribe to my channel on YouTube, which is Up My Hockey with Jason Podolin. I usually stream the podcast episodes live there. I also place a lot of my video content on YouTube for access. So definitely trying to grow that channel as well. So if you want to subscribe to myself on YouTube, that would be a thank you to me, and you'll get all the latest content from me as it pertains to the hockey world and playing our best on the ice. Other than that, upmyhockey.com, www.upmyhockey.com. That's if you're a coach or a manager or an organization that would like to work with me directly with your players or with your coaches. That's where you can find out about my services and about how to reach out. So those are the greatest places to follow me. Up My Hockey on Facebook, the parent group, Up My Hockey on YouTube, and also www.upmyhockey for my website. Now back to the episode with Chris Dingman.
Yeah, no, good for you. Yeah, that was cool. Same experience for me. And I find that now, looking back as a 45-year-old guy, like, and you had me and I had Barnett, like these were like big name agents and still big hitters in the game. Like the preparation for that was like zero that I remember, as far as like the meetings were concerned. It's like, yeah, you're going to go meet with these guys. But like that was essentially your introduction. And then it was like fed to the wolves, right? You're an 18-year-old young man sitting in front of, sometimes a room full of men, right? Sometimes less, sometimes more. But I thought I handled it all right too. But geez, it was sink or swim there though, right? It was an intimidating environment, and some guys were nice, some guys weren't. Some guys really wanted to put you on the spot, and I found that now looking back, like if I was an agent, I would have those guys a little more prepared and a little more ready for what to expect.
The worst than that was we got flown. We get flown out to a couple different cities. So we went to Quebec City when they were still in the league, and then New Jersey and a couple other places. And we were like, we're done the season, but you're still training. But like we go to Jersey and we got to do the treadmill test and the bench press. And so the Russian guys, they're killing it on the treadmill. Us Western League guys, we'd been done. Like that year, I think we lost in the first round or second round, but we've been done for a month and a half, 2 months. And I was playing like slow pitch with my billets. And so you're working out, but we're like trying to stay on this treadmill, like bench press, no problem. But so you're doing this testing, and then you're going to these cities, and they take you. I remember like Quebec, we were going out with Sherry Bassin, where we go to this like great restaurant, and then we go to the bar after the Dagobert, I think it was, or something. And all I had to say was parley anglais, and then I'd be like, we like just sour, and I didn't know any French. And but like kind of underage, and you could go out and have beers, and it was a different experience. But that was it was really cool, but it was really intimidating too, because you fly in, and then they pick you up at the airport or whatever, and then you go to the hotel, and then you go do your physical testing and your meeting or whatever. So it was kind of cool, but really scary. That part of it was, I don't know, maybe a little more intimidating for me. The draft was this year. Oh, here you go, talk to this guy, and you just try and answer as honestly as possible, and try not to have Paul Holmgren crush your hand in half.
Right, exactly. So both our last years, we crossed paths in junior and in the WHL final. You guys had a heck of a team that year, as did we. I think you guys were ranked in the top 5 in the CHL, and we were ranked first at the end of the season. And so our paths collide. You guys ended up, I think, beating us in 5 there. What is your recollection? You've mentioned Bobby Brown. I do remember Bobby Brown because he won the MVP of the playoffs that year for you guys. Lehman was playing really well too, and then you guys went and really pissed me off by not doing well in the Memorial Cup and made us look even worse. But what do you remember from that run? And was that ended up being kind of the highlight of your junior career and a great way to finish it off?
Yeah, I just remember like being the captain. I took a lot of pride in that. And I had a knee injury that I was playing with, and the scout from Calgary came to watch. He's like, "Oh, how you feeling?" I said, "Well, my back kind of hurts." He's like, "Anything else?" I'm like, "Well, my knee too. If I sit too long." So it was during the All-Star break. He flew me out to Calgary, and I ended up having surgery the next day. And I was struggling at the time, and Kelly was like thinking of trading me maybe. So he gave me the talk, and I came back, and then I was playing really well. And but I took pride in being the captain, and you guys had a great team. I remember that one defenseman. Who was it? He was all over me. I fought him a couple times. It wasn't as big as me, but I just would hit him with everything I had. But he was just all over me the whole time. And I just remember like the bus ride out, like after we won, it's like 18 hours I think back to Brandon, and so we had beers on the bus. And we were like Kelly let us have beers, so. We have some beers and we go to sleep. We wake up the next day. And we stopped in like Regina or something. I said, "Hey, Krim, can we get some beers?" And he's like, "Well, I'm not buying beers." I said, "Well, I had signed or had my card deal or something, so I had a credit card." And I said, "Well, like, am I allowed to buy beers?" He's like, well, I can't stop you if you want to do that. And I was like, okay. So I come wheeling back. I got a couple flats and, junior, I felt like, it was awesome. And, we came back and Keystone Center, we got back. There was a bunch of fans, like 1,000 fans greeting us. And it was great. So I just remember that. And, the Memorial Cup was, I don't know if we had like Granby. He was Granby. They had LaRock, they traded for all these players. And, I remember we were playing, it was in Peterborough. And you're sour about it. I'm sour about it too, because we were up 3-0 against Peterborough in the semifinals. And we had like 8 straight penalties called against us. And we ended up losing like 4-3, I think it was, or something. And I went over I'm the captain. I went over to the official. I was like, listen, man, like, what are you calling there kind of thing? He goes, oh, too many technical or whatever. And I heard the story after. So Kelly McCrimmon, he goes in the press box. He goes and grabs the head of officiating. He's got him by the throat, like has him up against the wall, like, give him the whatever. Because they wanted Peterborough to be, in the finals because they were the host. Whether they did or not, who knows. But, we're up in control of the game, and it was pretty lopsided, the calls. So it was I remember that was pretty disappointing in that sense that, we should have won that game, but, officials or not, we still lost and, whatever. And then, that was like my last year. And then I get a call like that night, hey, we want you to go to St. John. I was like, what? They're like, yeah, we want to go to St. John. Flames are still playing. So I remember going to St. John, and Jerome was supposed to go, but he had a back injury or something. And I really didn't want to go. I was like, it's my last year junior. I was a captain. I just want to wrap this up. Like, well, they want you to go. Like, I have Donnie Meehan, and Donnie Meehan had Jerome too. And I'm like, well, Iggy didn't have to go. Why do I have to go? Like, that's kind of how I felt. Maybe not the best life choice at the time, but, whatever. But Jerome had played in Calgary in the N.H.L. team, with the Flames. And Jerome, I'm not saying anything bad about Jerome. We already know Iggy's one of the best guys ever and one of the greatest players and whatever. But anyways, I wanted to kind of wrap up my junior career. And so anyways, what I remember about that is then I got to go to the minors. In St. John, I got my beard already, and we don't play a game for like 10 days. So I'm in a rush to get there, and all we do is practice. And then we went to a Red Sox game because I think we were playing Portland or something. And then we took a bus and we got hammered and we went to a Red Sox game. So we're like, spent the first 2 days there. I was like hammered. We're like, because it was weird. The minors was weird like that. You'd only play on the weekends or something. So we played like 2 games. They said you just played 2 games, and we had like 4 days without any games. So I think go there and, whatever, go to the baseball game. And then I ended up playing 1 game and went back home, and then went back to junior, and then all the guys were pretty much gone by then. So that was a little disappointing in that sense. And then packed my stuff up and went back to Edmonton and continued on. So yeah, that was kind of what I remember about that. I took a lot of pride in being a leader, and that was the second Memorial Cup we'd gone to. We went to the one the year before because Kamloops was the host team, and we lost them in the league championship. So we went and we lost in the semifinals that year too. We lost 2-1 to I think it was the Junior Red Wings. We shot them like 42-21. Their goalie was unbelievable, and we were playing. Brian Elder was our 17-year-old goalie at the time, and so yeah, I was 2 years in a row losing the semifinals, but I wouldn't trade it for at the time it would have been great to win a Memorial Cup, but I wouldn't trade it for the ones I actually won later in my career. So, but at the time, hugely disappointing, and
sure,
sour grapes or fill the swallow, I guess would be the best way to put it.
Yeah, I really wanted to be there. That was a really fun way. I mean, for us personally to finish, obviously you get into the cup, like you couldn't imagine a better way. And we had a really big run there. Obviously you got stopped by you guys, but that was the best hockey I think I might have ever been playing in my career. It looks like you had a good playoff there as well, scoring goals, having fun. I remember hitting a post against Laner. We came back from Brandon. I think it was 1-1. We won a game in overtime there, and we came back. And I was just rolling, and then I hit a post on a shorthanded breakaway against Lehman, and then I never scored at home. I never scored like the next 3 games, and that was we ended up. You guys won all 3 in Spokane, which was like so crazy. And like you said, and then off you went. And then same thing. I ended up getting called up. That was the year I got called up to Florida. So That was the year Florida went to the finals.
Yeah.
So I was supposed to play the first game there when I got in. Ray Shepard was hurt. That never worked out. And then I was a black ace all the way to the final. So that was like, what a crazy year. And that was also the year of the World Junior. So like that was like the busiest year of like my hockey life. Like, World Junior Championship, all the league final, Stanley Cup final. Like as a 19-year-old, 20-year-old, it's like, holy shit, this is a lot. Let's talk about the first.
Florida. Yeah, you're 19-year-old kid skating in Florida.
What's that?
I said, no, you're a 19-year-old kid and you're skating in Florida. Like, what am I doing here?
Yeah,
You go to the beach,
exactly.
work on your tan after practice.
That is what we were doing. We were practicing, and then we were hitting the beach, and like, oh my gosh, it was definitely two different existences. Like for the Black Aces and those guys that were actually in the trenches every game, like they were beat up, we were tanned, we were having a blast. We were, it was definitely a different existence. But you mentioned your first, I mean, you dipped your toe in the water there, pro with St. John, then you went back. Were you I mean, obviously you were hoping to make the team your first year pro there, like meaning the big club, the Flames. Was that your expectation? Or was it a letdown to go down to the minors, or what was that experience like for you?
Yeah, it was a big letdown, to be honest, because it was literally like the last cut as an 18, 19-year-old. And I remember as a 19-year-old, I wanted to go back to junior. I was talking to Kelly. I said, Kelly's like, have they told you anything? I said, no, I'm just in the hotel. And, they weren't sure they were maybe going to keep me. And I was trying to talk to Kelly. If they, Kelly McCrimmon, who was my GM and junior at the time, and Brandon, I'm like, have they talked to you? I was like, no. And then, what happened is everybody got fired. So Doug Risebrow, Tom Thompson, all the guys that drafted me, they get fired, new coach, whatever. And I played junior in anywhere from 228 to 234. But at 234, I was 8% body fat. I started 12% every year as you learn more about training, diet, nutrition. Every year I decreased my body fat. So at 234 was a good 234. I just remember going in my 20-year-old in my first year pro, and it was this is my last chance. So in the newspaper, it was Dingman's last chance. I'm like, I played one game pro basically. I haven't even played pro, but those are the headlines. And I was actually, we're in the midst of moving right now. We're because we need another bedroom because we had the baby and stuff. And I was looking at old articles, and it was Dingman's last chance and struggling. And I remember I haven't even played a game pro. This is it. But anyway, so they asked me, can you come into camp under 230? So okay, so I see a nutritionist, and I go on a diet. I come into camp at 227, and first cut, bye. So I go to the minors, and Paul Baxter's the coach, and I'm not a big fan of him. I don't want to get into that too much, but so I lead the team in preseason scoring, and then everyone else comes down, like Clark Wilm and all those guys. Ian Gordon was our goalie, a bunch of Westlanders, and I barely played the whole year. I'm a first round pick, and Paul Baxter at the end of the year, I remember him saying to my girlfriend at the time, now my wife, I've been with forever. He's like, yeah, it was the best thing for him. I needed to be hard on him. I'm like, you can be hard on me, but I didn't play. I barely played. And then, you always knew when, I don't know what your experience was, but you always knew when the player personnel guy was in town, because all of a sudden I'm on the second line and I'm playing. And it's I'm talking to him, what's going on? I'm like, I don't play. It doesn't matter what I do. And I was never a whiner. And, I was always a guy that worked hard and, showed up early. And, my whole career, I had, go on the ice early, shoot on the goalie, stay after and whatever, and just didn't play. And, so it was really frustrating. And I remember calling Kelly. I'm like, I want to go, I even called Donnie me, and I'm like, I want to go back to junior. He's like, well, you don't want to do that. I'm like, I'm not playing. I'd rather go back and play, because I just wasn't playing. So that first year was really disappointing. We had fun. Obviously, it was the minors and whatever, but it was really disappointing. And then Brian Sutter got the job, and I remember him calling me in the summer, and he said, hey, I watched you play Dinger. I watched you play junior, and you could score, you could hit, you could fight. Basically, what's it going to take for you to make this team? And I remember saying to him, when you show up at camp and you're with a guy from the East Coast and a guy from junior, nothing against that, but you kind of know where you're at, right? The training camp numbers too, right? If you have number 72, it's different now, but back then, if you had 72, you're not a very good chance you're making the team. So I said, when you show up at camp, because the year before, Jerome had, he'd been traded for Joe Nieuwendyk, and Iggy had played with, he's playing with Fleury and Castles, who were their top guys kind of. And Jerome deserved to make the team. Don't misinterpret what I'm saying at all. But you're putting him in a position to succeed with, he's a great player and he's a good young player, and he'd played the playoff games of those guys. So that was kind of what I said to him. When you show up at camp and you kind of know where you're at, basically. So he's like, okay, we'll come to camp in shape. So then that next year, talking to Brian Sutter, I came to camp. I was in the top 5 or 7 in conditioning and testing, and I was playing at Fleury or Castles or Gimla in all the games. So I think in 8 games, I had 4 goals, 4 assists, and 6 fights, and make the team. And that's what I was telling you earlier. And then we get 2 months. It was like 2 months later. You guys can get a place and whatever. So I have to keep number 7. Yeah, you do. But anyways, like the disappointment of that first year pro, and then the next year. But then I was playing. I scored the 2nd game of the season, I think, and then I think like the 6th game, and I'm thinking like I might score 40, 2 and 6, whatever, right? I scored on Patrick Waugh, and then we were struggling mightily, so we went like 2 and 10 or 2 and 12 or something, and our goalies were Dwayne Rolison and Rick Tabernacci, and that was before Rolly. It was Rolly the goalie, and so we lost a lot of games 3-2 and 2-1. It wasn't all their fault or anything. We just whatever. We weren't a good enough team, but so I get punted to after 8 games or 10 games, I get punted to the 4th line because guys are complaining about ice time, and that was my story about Madison Square Gardens. I hadn't scored for 3 months, and literally all they wanted you to do on the 4th line was just go and run around. Like they didn't care if you took a penalty. Like I remember Rich Preston showing me video of a guy by the name of Ed Ward who was built like a Greek god. And the video was he tried to dump it in and he kind of bobbled it, and it was against Messier. So he slashed Messier, then he cross-checked him, then he got it back, and he went to dump it, he lost it, and then he whacked him again. And I remember Rico, we called him, he goes, "What'd you see there?" I said, "Well, he could have got the puck in deep, and then, he got it back, and then he didn't turn it over again." He's like, "No, did you see that intensity? Did you see that? You see that intensity?" I was like, "Oh my God, you're showing me video of a guy chopping a guy and cross-checking." So I was like, "Okay." So that was they were showing me video of that. So I was like, all right. So then, like Sudsy would say, literally you have 2 shifts to show me if you're ready to play. Otherwise you're not playing or whatever. So it was good in that sense where I would make sure my first shift or my first 2 shifts were I hit somebody and I was ready to go, but I would just literally go out and just try and run guys and whack them. And they didn't care if you took a penalty because they're like, "Oh, it's intense." And I'm like, "Okay, no problem." So yeah, it was a little disappointing the first year, and then the second year was ups and downs, and
Right.
it just really teaches you sometimes you got to be in the right place at the right time. And you got to have somebody that, believes in you, or, you never really have you remember there's certain coaches they have their guys. Remember Keenan would have his guys. So when Keenan was in New York, he'd bring in McTavish and Anderson and Noonan and all those guys, right? That he knew. And why he'd do that is because he knew what he'd get out of them. Craig McTavish would kill penalties, win face-offs, and, play basics. So, I always say if Bobby Lowe's could have been a coach in the N.H.L, if I would have played for him, would my career been different, or would I have more opportunities? You never know. I just always think, and I was talking to Scout too. He's like, "Well, you had a pretty good career," and I was always a guy who was I wanted more. I wanted to play more, and whatever. And I was very lucky in everything I did. And I think I earned it because I worked my ass off. But you always wonder, if I was someone's guy, would I've, because sometimes you see where they'll put a guy in Colorado, Alex Tanguay, he was a 1st-round pick, and he was playing with Sakic and Hayduk, Merry Christmas. And Alex Tanguay, great guy. Tangs was awesome, right? But you're playing with Joe Sakic and Milan Hayduk. It's, you're going to score 20 unless there's something really wrong, right? But they're putting you in a position to succeed. And so just different things like that. You look back and who knows, but could have been different. No. It could have been worse. In fact, who knows?
Yeah. No, for sure, man. I think you hit a lot of great points there, and that was the one thing that you recognize on the way through is that there is that element to him. There's a relationship element to hockey, and it's not just whoever the best player might be or how it fits. There's pieces to a puzzle on a team, and there's also the relationships within that team. And some coaches obviously are going to like different aspects of players differently, right? They're going to have preferences, and those preferences make a difference. Like you said, Paul Baxter Chris Dingman wasn't high on his radar. And for whatever reason, whereas if Bob Lowe's was there, you would probably have 1st-line power play minutes standing in front of the net, right? You know what I mean? Because he knew you and knew what you were all about. Is there any takeaways from that first year? If you were to do that first year again, I don't know how you handled that off the ice, on the ice. Would there have been anything you would tell a young Chris Dingman now, that, that would maybe have helped out in that scenario?
To be honest, to go in there and challenge them to a fight. To be honest, you hear the stories of Chris Chelios when who was a Keenan sat him out or something. He went in his office and he took his stick. And I've met Chelly a couple of times, a great guy. He took his stick and knocked everything off his desk and said, "You're not sitting me out. You do that again, I'm gonna kill you." And then you remember, the roofs that were the styrofoam, the squares, whatever that styrofoam, whatever stuff. and they javelined his stick into the roof and walked out, and he never sat out, and he never sat out again. And I think it was Chelios or Danico. It was like one of those two guys. And I heard a similar story about Danico, but if I would have done it differently, that's what I would have done. I would have went in and I would have challenged Baxter and said, "You better freaking play me, or why aren't you playing me?" And got in his face, because I think I was a guy that didn't like rocking the boat. And even over the course of my career, I was always a good team guy. And like, I remember I had 2 goals in 2 games in Tampa, and then I sat out 11 straight because Torts wanted to get more speed in the lineup. I'm like, well, we just lost 5-1. I scored the only goal. I guess it wasn't that slow, but I think I would have been more confrontational and fought like in that first year, because Paul Baxter, he thought he had to be hard on me because I was a first-round pick, but he loved Clark Wilm or Keith McCambridge, and they're great guys, and Wilmer had a good career, but like, were we any different? Like we're all out drinking together and stuff, and you know, and like Wilmer wanted to be my roommate. And I remember calling my wife, my girlfriend. I'm like, "You got to come down. Like, I can't live with you. Like, it's not going to be good," because we all lived in the same building. We had fun anyways, but I was like, "You got to come down and live with me. Like, I can't. I'll probably drink myself out of the league or something, because there wasn't anything else to do in St. John. You played hockey, you drank beer, we played cards, and
Right.
there wasn't a lot going on. So yeah, that's the one thing I really would have done differently. Is I would have went in and forced the point and said, "Why are you playing me?" or whatever, because I came in, I did everything going into camp. I came in it the way you wanted. I was in the top 10 in conditioning, my body fat, whatever. Like, what else do you want me to do, basically? But I was never a guy that really wanted to rock the boat. So I think I would have, telling a younger me or what I would have done differently, I would have rocked the boat and made
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that's great to be able to stand up for yourself. And that's one thing retrospectively looking back, is that the coaches that I had that were hard asses, that's exactly what they wanted to see out of you too. That's what made them tick. They wanted to see that fire and that passion. And a lot of times players would, me for one, would think of like, that's disrespectful, right? Like, I'm disrespecting this guy by doing that. But really, they wanted you to show that and respect yourself, and I think that's kind of left the game a little bit, or is leaving it, that type of confrontational approach to like show how much you want it. But like you said, there's lots of guys that's exactly what they wanted to see. So you might be right there. You might have got a little more minutes by doing that. That's for sure.
But that goes against like the way we were brought up in like Western League. You paid your dues, like, you played on the fourth line, you carried the stick bag, you did all that. Like, that goes against everything that was ingrained in us as kids. Like, you shut your mouth and you paid your dues. And then to what you're saying, these coaches, they want you to then challenge them. Well, like, I remember going to like a junior, like Bobby Lowe's took one look at me. I had three earrings on the bottom and one up top at the time. And I was into music. I was a drummer. But he took one look at me. He goes, "You don't think you're keeping those effing things, do you?" And I was like, "Well, kind of." He's like, "Not if you're going to freaking play here. Get him out of here, whatever." So I took him out of my ears. It was like, wasn't like I was allowed to do it. No one was. So it's just so like, to be confrontational, because you didn't want to be that guy that was a problem or an asshole or whatever. So it's just, if you would have known that, but it's like like coaches back then, like, and you experience this probably with different guys, is that it's always like a mind game. They're always playing a mind game with you. And, very few coaches like, "This is what I want from you. This is what I want you to do." Like, everything was always like a trick or a mind game. And it's like, why does it have to be that way? Like, you're a young guy, you're insecure or whatever. And like, other guys are just, you feel like they're handed a position, or, they're never threatened or sat out, where not everyone's like that. So, I think wish it would have been a little different, but it's obviously now it's more about talking to guys, and you can't really yell and scream. I mean, some guys still do, but here and there, but obviously the communications has changed quite a bit.
Hey there, have a new program coming out called the Peak Potential Hockey Project. It's elite mindset skills for the serious hockey player. This is the first time I've brought my services to a group environment. The success I've been having with my private clients has been amazing. The work I've done with teams last year was super rewarding, and now I want to bring in different individuals from all across North America who want to work on their mindset skills and prepare for this next season in a 4-week program that includes calls with me, 4 weekly calls with me. There's also online material that is done in bite-sized, easy-to-consume pieces with actionable steps where you can apply this stuff to your day, to your life now, so you can get better at it. So when you are in the heat of a season, coming this fall. You can use some of these things to help you better prepare for games, handle anxiety, adversity, prepare your state to be the best you can be in the moment for each and every shift. So super excited to bring this to a broader audience. You can check out the details of the Peak Potential Hockey Project on my website, upmyhockey.com. Only 20 players I'm accepting, and yeah, it's going to be a great ride. I think it's perfect for anyone 14 years of age and older. And the earlier you get this stuff in you, the better. So if you are all interested in what we've been talking about here on Up My Hockey, about being able to use your mind, being able to use your mindset and your approach and your perspective and your intention and your character and all these amazing intangibles to help you better succeed and prepare you for success and also prepare you to handle some adversity, then this is the program for you. And I think a lot of players need this right now after a little bit of an uncertain season and a little bit of a disappointing season for many, and they need to use these skills and develop these tools to make sure they don't lose any ground on the field. So without further ado, you can find that at www.upmyhockey.com. And back to the episode with Chris Dingman.
Yeah, no, great points. I mean, Brad Larson, who you obviously know, as do I, just got given the head coaching job there in Columbus, and well-deserved in my opinion. But I think it's guys like that are coming in now that understand that those mind games that happened before, was bullshit, essentially. I mean, like, the accountability lies in players knowing what you want from them and then allowing them to go out and do it. And not having the smoke and mirrors and the guesswork. And, Lars, I listened to his press conference. I mean, all about accountability, all about honesty. And I think once you get that from a coach, then it's on you. The responsibility is on you if they're being serious with you. And I think a lot of us that grew up there and played in the 90s and the early 2000s, we didn't have that experience. So now those guys that are in those shoes now recognize, sort of where we went wrong back in the day and are evolving the game, which is a blessing for these young players. But now there is more onus on the players, and I see that there's a lack of accountability with the players. Like, meaning once you get told something, you don't want to hear that something that's right in your face, and you don't really want to hear it. You don't want to listen to it. You need to be able to follow through on that if you want to, have the career that you want. But that's another topic. What about your first trade there? So, you have your year in the show. Turns out to be obviously an amazing thing for you and for your career. And you go to a team that I want to hear about. What did that feel like, getting that first trade, and were you expecting it? And walk us through that.
Well, yeah, I was expecting it. It was sort of, because I remember one of the player personnel guys came down to St. John, and I was back, you play 3 games in 3 nights, and then you go to the bar. And I remember the bar Rockies, we go there. There's one other one, a country. It was like half rock, half country bar. And I remember, like, one of the player personnel guys from Calgary came down. I said to him, like, what are you doing? And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, what are you guys doing? He's like, what do you mean? I said, like, this was when, remember, like, I don't know if you remember, like, the Canadian teams were in danger of moving to the U.S. Like Edmonton, Calgary, the Canadian dollar, like, they were struggling, right? The Oilers had that ownership group that took over. And I remember saying to him, like, and I had a clause in my contract, if I played 70 games, my contract became a one-way contract, rather than a two-way. I had a two-way of guaranteed, whatever. And so the year before I played over 70, so they sent me down, and I'm making 4.25 in the minors. And then, you get your complaint, like, that they might lose their team and they need this funding, and the Canadian teams. And I remember saying to them, like, what are you guys doing? Like, you guys are complaining that you're losing money. I'm making 4.25 down here. And what it was is, like, the team had traded German Titov for Ken Reggett, David Roach, and Ken Reggett got hurt in camp. And then, it was like basically me or David Roach. I don't know, like, so they keep him, they send me down. But, like, you're complaining you're losing money, and you didn't have to send me down to make 4.25 in the minors. So I was kind of looking for a change, and and that change happened, and it was terrific. Like, to go to a team like Colorado, I was in the Fleury deal. I was the other guy. So, and I played. Like, I went to Hershey and rented a car in Hershey. The whole place smells like chocolate, which was awesome. And but my coaches there were unbelievable. Mike Foligno and Jay Wells, they were great. They were like. And Mike Foligno was the first coach that ever asked me how I was doing. Like, how are you doing? I remember I got called up for one game. I fought Probert. First shift, line up, Probert, comes, lines up. We scored a goal. And Mulliken was their coach. Remember the guy from Junior? I think he's in Saskatoon, or Medicine Hat, or Moose Jaw, one of them.
Oh, Saskatoon, I think, yeah.
So he sends Probert out. or we'd, yeah. So we line up, and Probert comes out, and he gives me, your coach sent you out here to give me a try. I said no, but if you want to go, we can. He goes, you sure? And he asked me, and I was like, yeah, sure. So, anyways, like, yeah, I have a good fight. I beat him. Then he wants to fight again. And I played a minute 52 seconds. But anyways, so before the game, Bob Hartley, he was kind of a dickhead, and he gives me this speech about, you do the job, I don't care, I'll keep you, blah blah blah. After the game, I beat Probert, and then we have another fight. He jumps me, and no, it's like nothing fight. We fall down. And then he calls me in after and says, well, we're sending you back down. And I see here you're 246. You can't play in the league at 246. You got to lose 10 pounds. So I'm like, get called up, whatever, sent back down. I wanted to quit. I wanted to pack it. I was like, what more do you want me to do? I could have got killed and fighting Bob Probert. And then I see his documentary where that was back when he was back on cocaine and doing steroids. And I'm like, I just fought a coked up guy, one of the toughest guys in the league ever, and beat him. And then you tell me I got to lose weight, and I got to fight these guys. And I just wanted to I was really down. And I just remember going back, and Mike Foligno was like, how's it going? I said, I think I want to quit. And he's like, what do you mean? I said, I just, what more can I do? Basically, I fight, I do everything he says. And then he tells me I got to lose weight. And he said, listen, I can't. I'll never forget. Mike Foligno goes, I can't control what that asshole's going to do up there, but down here you're going to play. So he's like, you know how to lose weight, just ride the bike. So I had to ride the bike for 60 minutes after practice. He's like, just ride the bike, lose the weight, and you're going to play. Down here, you're going to play. He played me overtime, 4-on-4, penalty kill, power play, and it was great. And, he was a big reason why the next year, I came to camp in great shape, and I ended up making the team over Scott Parker. But he was a big part of that, like him and Jay Wells. Then we were in the Black Ace. We were up for 2 months. I'm like, how long are we going to be up here for? And it's how messed up it is. So Hartley, he calls up me and Parker. We're playing Detroit, and they had Darren McCarty, and Prover's already gone, but they had the grind line or whatever, and it was me or Parker was going to play, and Parker was barely playing in the minors. And nothing against Scott Parker, but he's he was a real tough guy. He wasn't the best player. I was a better player, if you ask me, and whatever. But that's just my opinion. So at the time I was playing more. Well, they called the two of us up. Hartley dresses Parker and tells him in warm up just to skate across the red line and stare at their team. And then he makes them sit at the end of the bench and just glare at their team. And it was just embarrassing. It was like minor league shit, right? And Detroit, they're like, what the, they don't care, right? And Parker didn't even play his shift. So we get called up. He doesn't, I'm as embarrassed for him too, because it's just bullshit, play him a shift or two. But he made him stand there and just stare at the other bench. They don't care. What the hell is this guy staring at us for? Because they know they're not going to be on the ice against them. And it's the playoffs. Right. They know they don't have to fight. So anyways, it was just weird. So we get called up, and so he plays, I don't. And then, there was 8 of us, and Mark Denny was a goalie. And then they send Tanguay in school. They weren't eligible to play because they came from junior. And then they sent Parker home. So they sent half the guys home. And then I stayed for the whole run. So he goes up, he plays ahead of me. And then I end up staying longer than him. And it was just a great experience being a Black Ace. I never played or whatever, but, just to be able to hang out with Jay Wells, Mike Foligno made it fun. They made practicing fun. And then we go to a Dave and Buster's, and we would watch the dogs, because Foligno loved the dogs. So I was like, what's this? What's a trifecta? It's with $1 or whatever. It's nothing, right? But it was so much fun. But those guys had such an impact on my career, and they were doing the push-ups with us and stuff, 10 to 1, 1 to 10, stuff like that in the locker room. And so it was a great experience. It was great to go there. It was great to have those guys, the coaches, as I said, Foligno and Mike Foligno and Jay Wells, and the first guys that asked me how I was doing, and then just that whole team, just the guys, some of the greatest players, the greatest people, Ray Bourque, Patrick Waugh, I could go on. They're all awesome guys and treated me like an equal, and which was great. And, I go for beers of Ray Bourque, and it's like, what am I doing? I'm going for a beer of Ray Bourque, and I'm sitting next to him at a bar. And it was awesome. It was just the whole experience. And, people always ask me, what was the difference between Tampa and Colorado or whatever? And I just, going to Colorado, in Calgary, you're trying to make the playoffs. That was your goal, right? Our goal is to make the playoffs. In Colorado, your goal is to win the cup. And that's what it was. That was your goal, was to win the Stanley Cup. And it was unbelievable going there. Just that we're going to win the cup, and that's anything less is unacceptable. And I just love that. And then we traded for Ray the first year, and then we lost in 7 games to Dallas. And then the next year it was, we're going to finish first overall. So if we have a game 7, it's in our building. Anything less is unacceptable. And it was the whole season was about winning, and it was unbelievable. It was just awesome. And it wasn't there was a ton of pressure. It was just all about winning. And everything was like, win one for Ray. And Ray was like, don't win one for me. He's like, screw that. You win it for yourself because my name will be right next to yours. So, and he actually went in, I told the story a few times, but he actually went in St. Louis. He went in and told the coaches because they were killing him. And we had we had Adam Foote and we had Rob Blake and Greg DeVries and Martin School and John Cloud. We had good defensemen. And they're killing him. We call timeout with the lead so they could have Ray Bourque out so they could rest him. And he went into the coach's office and basically slammed the door and came out. And a minute later, 2 minutes later, and said, everyone's going to play. Like, be ready. Because, Hartley was doing his minor league thing where he was killing the top guys. And, in the playoffs, like, you need everybody. You need 4 lines. Like, you can't go 4 rounds. But he was killing. Like, Joe Sakic's one of the best conditioned athletes I've ever played with. But he can't play 25 minutes a night as a forward. You can't unless it's all power play. But I just remember, like, Ray Bourque wanted to win so bad. He went in there and told the coaches to play him less. And we were going into, like, triple overtime or something. And I was playing with Dave Reed and Dan Ino at the time. And we'd score Steve Reinprecht, it was usually one of the 3 of them that we'd all play together. And we'd scored a goal that game. We'd played, like, less than 8 minutes going into triple overtime. So think about that. Like, overall ice time. And those other guys, like, he was killing them. So, I just remember that. Like, Ray wanted to win so bad. And Patty and, like, all those guys, like, he basically said, play me less. I can't play 30 minutes a night. And I just respect that. That's, guys are so selfish at times and about their points and whatever. And obviously he'd played a long time. And I remember him saying, I went to the finals like my first year, whatever, against Edmonton. He goes, I thought we'd be right back. And here I am 20 years later. So, like, he kind of knew not the gravity of it, but, you get older and whatever. And this is a Hall of Fame guy. They wanted to play less. Not that he wanted to play less. He knew he couldn't. I remember, like, every practice was optional. And he comes out, and I'm like, Bubba. The guys called him Bubba. And I'm like, Bubba, or Borky, I'm like, Bubba, what are you doing, man? He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, why are you out here? Like, it's not optional for me, but it's optional for you. Like, you're like 41 or 42, I think I said. And he goes, first of all, I'm 40 or 41. I'm not 42. Second of all, if I don't come out and skate, I might not be able to get out of bed because my back hurts so bad. So shut the – I'm like, I don't know. I wasn't being rude. I was just – like, he was just joking around, but he would come out for like 10 minutes, so every practice was optional for the top guys. So he would come out for 10 or 15 minutes, do a couple of shooting drills, and then just go off the ice. And then when the rest of us would stay out and skate and do extra. But he just loved it. If he didn't do that, he wouldn't be able to move. And I was like, okay. Because I was just kind of like, why? Like, man, if I had the option, I probably wouldn't be out here. Like, if I played as much as you, kind of thing. So anyways, I just like those couple things I remember about him, but it's just such a good guy and a good leader. So that whole experience was just awesome because it was all about winning and it was all about the process, and it was just great. It wasn't like, because as a team, your goal is to win the Stanley Cup, whether that's realistic or not. But I just think it sends the wrong message where you're like, our goal is to make the playoffs. Well, no, it isn't. Your goal is to win a Stanley Cup, whether that's realistic or not. Is one thing, but that's why we play, right? We play to win. Like and if you don't make it, you don't make it, or if you lose, you lose. But you put your chips on the table, you try as hard as you can. I just really loved the atmosphere of those guys. It was all about winning and the team and stuff, and which was really refreshing. It really had a big impact on my life. That these great players weren't assholes. They were awesome people that treated you well and took care of you and stuff. So really good.
Yeah, and it wasn't always the case, You played on different teams. Well, actually, you were on another championship team where I'm sure that, a similar culture must have been created. There's not always, not every team's equal in the N.H.L. and the cultures aren't equal, and the players that are involved in them aren't equal. So it was awesome you were able to see that. And in my conversation with Brad Larson, who was also part of that Colorado Avalanche team, never won a cup with them, but was a part of that, the greatness there. And he went from there to Atlanta. And he said, the difference was, you could cut it, you could see it, right? You could feel it. And just being a part of that extreme accountability that you're speaking of, it was really cool to listen to him say that, because it was like no one was off limits. Everybody wanted the absolute best out of everybody and would call each other on it. And one thing Brad said was he felt important in his role, really important. They made him feel important, that his 7-8 minutes made a difference every night, and someone would go out of their way to make them feel like he was a part of it. And I think not only is that transfer, not only is that a great lesson for hockey and for coaches and for players, trying to create that environment, but also, you're not a hockey player anymore. Now you're in business. Teams that kind of can get that attitude have a massive advantage. So I think it's transferable to anything. And it's awesome hearing about success, because it definitely leaves clues.
Yeah. Well, and even I can look at it coaching now, and my kids are playing hockey, and I look at it like a coaching. You're coaching them to be human beings. Like you're coaching hockey or whatever you coach, baseball, soccer, football. But I look at it, like talking to my wife and different people, it's like you're like I'm developing human beings. Like show up early, be ready, don't be an asshole, be a yes man. Listen, can you play left wing? Yes, sure. Can you play center? Sure. Play right wing? Sure. Defense? Sure. Yeah, whatever you need. Like like you're developing good people, and I think that's what hockey and sports is good for. It's very humbling at times. I think we both know that because you can be called up, sent down, cut, whatever. But it teaches you to work. And I think you see in business, like even coming back to Alberta, is there's a lot of companies that hire ex hockey players because they know they work hard and they're good guys, and they can tell stories and it's relatable. So I think that part of it, and like even the winning is so hard. And we've been like in junior, I was close. I won a Western League championship, but I never won a Memorial Cup. And you go back, would you do it differently? But winning is so hard. And when you see teams that win and don't win, there was always like there was a fatal flaw, there was something was missing. And I go back to Washington where Alex Ovechkin was scoring 50 like nothing, right? He's just. And then I remember like I was around the team in Tampa, and I was doing TV and stuff, and he'd say hi to me. He's like, hi, Chris, and I was like, holy shit, Ovi knows my name, like because I was done playing or whatever. But I just remember with like the year they won, and it was probably the least talented team and they had over the years because they they had so many talented players, like Mike Green, and go through their defense and Schultz, whatever. But it was like I remember watching the playoffs, and it was even during that season. And I'm watching, and Alex Ovechkin dives and blocks a shot. And then he was playing defense. He was playing the trap, and he was dumping it in. And I'm like sitting there going, well, if Alex Ovechkin's jumping in front of a shot, if I'm a third line guy, like if I'm Devontae Smith-Pelly or a third or fourth line guy, I better hell is like diving my face in front of a puck. And it was like that culture. And he really like set the culture because he was one, like I just really believe like why they won. It was that he'd scored goals, right? He'd scored a ton of goals. Like he'd been a 50-goal scorer, but he wanted to win. And I think he knew like he wouldn't be in that conversation until he won a cup. Like whether it's right or wrong, you talked about the Hall of Fame and, like whether winning's important. And I think winning is important. Like, sometimes, guys are just in the wrong situation, but that's like that example of him. He was playing defense. He's blocking shots. He's like making kick saves. And it's just infectious, like his teammates and stuff. And he was cheering his teammates on. So when you see that, like for me, I love that. Like, I just love the teamwork aspect of it and the camaraderie is that, when you get everybody buying in, which is the biggest thing as a coach, I think. And I remember someone said this to me, like, you're never going to have everyone happy because your fourth line guys, your guys that are sitting out, they're going to be sour because they're not playing. But he's like, as long as you have 2/3 of the guys pulling in your direction, they'll pull the other ones because maybe they'll get more ice time at a different time. But you're always going to have guys that are going to be unhappy. But if you have them like 2/3, then you're good because they'll pull the rest of the guys. And that's the hardest thing, I think, with coaching is that, we talked to you'd said earlier, it's the communication part.
By the way, we are on live on Facebook and we're on live on YouTube. So if this is an episode that you ever want to watch live, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel, Up My Hockey with Jason Podolin, or follow me on Facebook. Obviously, this gets released to all podcast platforms. It'll be on Monday. And this is an opportunity to join the conversation live and to ask a two-time Stanley Cup champion any questions you want to ask. So anyone who is listening right now, please ask your questions if you have anything for Dinger. So sorry about that, Dinger. I was just to piggyback on what you were saying there. Like, I think Ovi. I mean, and I didn't watch every game of Ovi of every playoff game, but the year they won, he seemed like a different player. Like it was not about him anymore. Like he had made that commitment, to do what it takes in any capacity to win. And I think it was a different Alex Ovechkin, and he got a different result. And I thought that was really cool to see because it was an evolution, a personal evolution for him, to see what it took. And other guys have done that. I mean, like Yzerman and other guys have had to learn what it takes to go from a superstar to a guy that can win a cup. And some guys just can't make that transition. So it's super cool to watch. In the two environments you were in there, you were surrounded by superstars, like you said, in Colorado. Maybe more of a little bit less superstar ridden, I would say, in Tampa, but still some amazing players. Martin St. Louis, for one, is somebody that I have a massive respect for. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on him. But what was that environment like there? Was it a little bit of different approach the year you guys won in Tampa as opposed to Colorado?
I don't know if it was a different approach. It was like Colorado, we had established superstars, and Tampa we had up and coming superstars. So Brad Richards and Marty St. Louis and Vinny Cavalier and Boyle. They were becoming great players. They were good players that became great players in those playoffs. Marty St. Louis was a good player, and he was, Craig Budden. He says it was, whatever, the worst mistake I made, or whatever, when he bought out Marty. But Marty got an opportunity in Tampa, and Torts liked him, and he tried him with Freddie Modine and Brad Richards, and he was just like Torts liked that line, and then the way they went, they were just aligned. So in Tampa, I remember we played Detroit, and we lost 2-1 in overtime or something. And that was kind of when guys went, like, we're a good team. And then we lost to Jersey in 5 games, I think it was, the year before we won. And Jersey went on to win the Cup, and it was like triple overtime we lost. And that was where we kind of went, okay, like, we can be a team maybe. Like, and that's like just with talking to the guys after, after we'd won and stuff. And then the next year we go into the season, and we just got on a roll. Like, we were struggling around December, and then we got on a roll, and we won the first round. We're like, okay, we match up pretty good here in Montreal. And then we won the second round. And we just kind of like, why not us? You know what I mean? Like, why can't we win? So the 2 experiences were just different in the sense where we were like, hey, we can win. And then you're playing Calgary, and they're an 8th seed or whatever, and it was great. It was like, again, between the 2 people say which one was better. There wasn't one that was better. Winning's awesome, and lucky to be there and be a part and have played. And it's just, Tampa had those guys. That's when they made a name for themselves. Marty became, Marty St. Louis, like, and then the Olympics and all that other stuff and everything else. They did the World Championships and the World Cups and stuff. So those guys really became the Peter Forsbergs and the Joe Sakics, and that's, to me, that was the difference between the 2, I guess, maybe.
All right. Yeah, super cool story. And then, must have been a little more flavor maybe in the second one, playing against Calgary, where you started from, and who had traded you and let you go. And, there were still some players there like Iggy and others that were there from when your time was there. So interesting the way that crosses. And one thing with your trades too, which I'll just think for between you and I, but like Rene Corbet, Kevin Weeks, Nolan Pratt too, who you won those 2 cups with. They're all been guests on the show before. So like it's kind of crazy how small the hockey world is in some instances. Give me your best St. Louis story, because I've said it on here once before. Like he's, unless you're like a real big Martin St. Louis fan, people don't really get like his journey to get to where he got to. Like he was told by Calgary that he wasn't good enough, right? That he'd never play in the N.H.L. And this is a Hall of Famer. Like, to me, that just blows my mind, right? Like you talked about opportunity, you talked about that earlier, right? Like, here's a guy who didn't get, if he wasn't put in a different situation, he might have never had a career. And he's a Hall of Famer, right? Like, somebody didn't think he was good enough to play in the league. And he just kept battling and kept battling. I talked to Kevin Weeks about it, and like he kind of started believing in himself in Tampa Bay and started believing that he could perform there. And then he got some proof and some results. And then obviously the rest is history. But what do you say about him and his personality and his character, or anything else you want to talk about with him? Because I just think he's got such a great story.
Well, we played together in the minors, and I block his shot. We're out there. The other team had the goalie pulled, so I take one off the ankle. I take off, and I'm going to go score. Well, he takes off, and he's going to go offside. And I'm like, I got to pass it.
Oh, I can't hear you again. I don't know why it's doing that. Can't hear you.
There, sorry. The phone is doing
that. You said he was going to go offside, and then I lost you.
Yeah, so he takes off. So we were talking about it after. So he takes off, and I like, basically, if I don't pass it to him, he's going offside. And I was kind of like, after, like, what are you doing, man? Like, hey, guy, I was going to score. And he's like, hey, I'm open, man. I saw the ice. You got to give it to me. It's your job, basically. And I was laughing. He's like, hey, you got to give it to me. And I remember that. I still remember that because he made me pass it to him, basically. But, he's a guy that chip on his shoulder, too small. His legs were massive, but he was a guy that was always in phenomenal shape. And, he got an opportunity in Tampa. Torch liked him. Torch liked the little guy. And he just took it and ran. That's Marty St. Louis to a T, that he had a chip on his shoulder. He wasn't good enough, too small, because at that time, everyone was getting drafted in the first round was like over 6 feet. And, it's just like you look at even our 2 careers. I started in Calgary. He was in the minors. And then he goes to Tampa. We both go to Tampa. And, he ends up playing a ton more than me. And, I was the first round pick. And it's just the way things work out. Like, Torch liked him. Like, he was one of, like, Torch just, he would have his guys, like guys he liked. And Marty was one of them, deservedly so. And Marty earned everything he got. He was in, like, when he went to Tampa, too, there's some injuries. So he got an opportunity. He started on the 4th line, and then they had some injuries. And then he got moved up, and he played with Modine and Richards. And then that line clicked for whatever it was, I think. And then they were great. And, look at the careers they all had. So, and they all complimented each other. So, that's just Marty. He's just that guy. Like, I used to joke around, like, go to Montreal, and I'm like, oh, the circus is in town. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, all the, the circus is because his family's all tiny, and they're super nice people. And hi, Chris, whatever. He's just like, they're all like 5'6", they're all just like small, like, shorter people and stuff. And so, yeah, Marty deserved everything he had. And the best thing about Marty is that he can walk on his hands, like literally like down a hallway, because he used to do gymnastics. So that's a little known fact. So every time I see him, he's still walking your hands. He's like, I don't know, maybe, yeah, he could down a hallway on his hands. Unbelievable. Yeah. So
that's sweet. That is super sweet. What was I going to ask you? I wanted to just a personal opinion on something that happened recently here in the playoffs. That Scheifele hit on Evans. Do you have what's your take on that? I just find that hit has been one of the things that has been like so decisive in the community and even amongst players. I mean, to listen to how Bieksa handled it and some of these other pundits, and then I talked to some people offline, and it seems like there is a pretty big divide there. Do you think? What do you think about that hit? Was it should have been a suspension? Should have been more? What's your feeling on that whole scenario?
I don't think it should have been a suspension. Like, to be honest with you, like, I mean, obviously the game's changed, so the way guys play is different. Like, guys routinely turn face the boards when someone's coming to hit them, like routinely. And like back when we played, you never did that because you get killed, right? Like you turned sideways, you turned your shoulder, and that's what you did. And in that position, like, what are you expecting on a wraparound? Like, I remember when I played, when you took the puck to the end, you expected to get hit. Like, that was, so when, like, Scheifele was probably frustrated, but, like, what else? Like, he didn't take a stride, but if he would have, like, let's say he would have kept skating hard, and what if he would have had his stick out? He probably would have got hurt, because if he would have lunged at him with his stick, he probably would have got smoked in the head. So, I mean, I look at it where, hitting's still a part of the game. And there's really no onus on the player now. Like, guys cut to the middle. And even when I coach Pee Wee kids, they like to cut to the middle. I'm like, listen, you can't do that. Next year, you're dead. And, like, ban them, you're dead. Like, you go to the top of the circles and just cut to the middle, like, you're dead. Like, you got to protect yourself. And so I think on that, I think it's, the onus is on the player. And, yeah, he's vulnerable and, like, concussions and whatever. But, part of hockey is, in the playoffs, it's a war of attrition where you're going to get hit. You're a defenseman. You got to go back and get the puck. You're going to get hit. It's the guy that continues to go back and continues to get the puck or, takes the hit on the board. So, I think it changed the complexion of the series. It was unfortunate the guy, the player got hurt, but, the way the rules are now, they have to call that. They have to do something. But there's so many other hits where, I mean, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. I just think, he was a skilled guy. He was frustrated, but the, principal point of contact was, his shoulder was down, it was tucked. But when you hit the guy, like, I don't know, when I used to hit guys, like, I'm trying to hurt them. Like, I'm not trying to decapitate them, but, I mean, the odd time you get mad, you want to, but you're not trying, like, you're trying to, like, tackling. We tackle someone in football. What are you trying to do? Like, you're not trying to not hurt them, but, like, when you let up and you don't hit, that's when you get hurt. So I think, I think it was unfortunate, but whatever.
Yeah, I think my opinion on that whole thing is where you started from, and that's the one thing that I haven't heard from anyone talking about it is the accountability on Evans. To how does he take that puck to the net, and why is he not expecting contact? Right, like you said it yourself. I mean, any time, and I don't care when we played, even now, you go to that area,
Like, that's a hot zone even in today's game. Like, you should be expecting contact. And because he wasn't, he got hurt. And I think that everyone, I mean, of course, no one wants him to get hurt. Everyone has to preface that. No one wants him to get hurt. That was awful to see him on the ice. But I think the accountability lies with him. And Scheifele shouldn't be responsible for him not being responsible. I mean, like, that's the part that I don't understand either. Like, why is the onus on Scheifele not to hit him if he's not expecting contact? Like, if you're going to take that puck there, like, Evans had a lot of other options, Dinger, as you know. He could have stayed behind the net with it. He could have taken it to the corner. He could have delayed and found a late guy. You know, he went to that goal because he wanted the goal, and he was not aware of what could happen to him. So I'm with you. I didn't think it was that dirty. I think it was a hockey play. I thought he kept his shoulder down. I thought he lined him up. And I think if Evans was expecting contact, then he probably would have stood there, wouldn't have got hurt, and it would have been fine. But anyways, and that's the part that I don't like. I don't like the accountability being shifted from the guy, with the puck or the player, and everyone else has to be concerned for this guy more than, it's a weird scenario where players are being put in now, I think, and I don't like it. I like a little bit of the onus back on the guy with the puck.
I would put it this way. So in 2001, we played New Jersey in the Stanley Cup Finals, and they had Scott Stevens. And what did Scott Stevens do? He'd kill guys. Like, he just destroyed. He was destroying everyone. And so we would do, like, they played the trap, and we work on our neutral zone our regroup, and it was D to D back to the D to the weak side, because you had to have a perfect breakout or, the trap. You wouldn't have got the puck, right? And then as soon as you move the puck, you got your stick up, because you never knew when Scott Stevens was on the ice. So you move the puck as a winger, and then you got your stick up and you got ready. And that was like, so he was killing everybody. So then there was in the series, he tried to run Sakic, and this is a big part of the series. And he tried to run Sakic, and Sakic dropped a shoulder on him, and like Stevens went like 1, 2, 3, and then fell on his back and went down. And we were like, oh yeah, wow, like, whatever. And it was like standing up to the bully or whatever. But but Sakic knew he was coming for him, and he braced him, and he caught him and gave him like the cold shoulder ahead of time. So that was a big part of it. But like, again, like, you got to protect yourself, and whether I don't want anyone to get hurt. You don't want that, but part of it too, it's a contact sport, and a weapon you have is body checking, is fighting. Like Tom Wilson or Milan Lucic, those guys are effective because they will run you over, and they could score. But then if you want to fight, they'll beat you up. So go ahead. I'm going to run you over. I'll fight you, and then I'll beat you up. Like, remember when Lucic ran over Miller? Oh my God! And then the poor Gostad was the guy that had to fight him. He took just an absolute beating, but Lucic ran him over and then turned around and said, "Who wants some?" And like, the game's changed a lot, but like, man, to possess all those things, size, speed, skill, and then to be able to fight, that's a weapon. Like, if guys in this day and age that can hit and do that, it's paramount, because the game's more about speed and skill, and which it should be. But if you possess that physicality and the ability to back it up, oh my goodness! Like, some people are all over me about the Tom Wilson thing in the playoffs, where he tackled the guy and he threw Panarin down. But what are you supposed to do in a brawl? Like, guys are jumping on your back. Like, those guys are lucky he didn't take his gloves off and lay a beating on him. And then, you see the Crosby. There was a couple games later, Crosby got a guy in a headlock and threw him to the ground and like tried to ram his head in the ice. Like, stuff happens all the time, but it's Tom Wilson, so people dislike him. And then remember the next game, it was Buchnevich, I think, cross-checked him, another guy in the head. So this guy, what's your, like, you're talking about intent. Like, what's your intent when you cross-check somebody in the head? Your intent is to knock their teeth out or to hurt them. It's not to be their buddy, right? Yeah. So again, so there's a bunch of different plays, but whatever. There's got to be some onus. So anyways.
Yeah. What we'll sign off with who your pick is. Who do you think's going to lift Lord Stanley this year?
Yeah, I think it's got to be Tampa. I just think the way they responded last night, they're just so talented, and they have a great goalie, and they can play physical too. So they're the trifecta almost, I guess. So I think they're going to be the team to beat. And we'll see if any different. But Vegas is I'd really like to see Vegas and Tampa, just to see, like, two teams that are speed, skill, size, and good goaltending. Like Fleury, oh my God, like he was gone 2 years ago. Now he's the guy again. Like, that's the beauty of sports. Like, he had a good attitude and stuck around, and now he's a guy. And Rob Leonard's has a great attitude too. So it's like a good tandem. So it's just great stories. And actually, Vasilevsky, I was still skating a little bit with the guys in the summer, and I remember skating with Vasilevsky. And he'd call me Grandpa. He's like, Grandpa, you want to do shootout? You want to do shootouts all the time? You couldn't score. Not that I could score on them anyways, but like other more skilled guys like Kucherov had a hard time scoring on them. And then we're like, everyone's like, this is the guy. And then they traded Bishop, and I was like, do they know what they're doing? I'm like, yeah, they knew, because he was that good. Like he's
Bishop, unbelievable.
Oh my God. So yeah, you have a goalie like that. So yeah, Tampa's my pick. Vegas wins, that'd be great too, because Crumman was my GM before, and it's a good story too. Like they built good teams. They've built. Anyone's saying they circumvented the salary cap of Kucherov. Well, you got to miss a whole season, and you got to just hop out of the wrapper and play games. And like he's been unbelievable. So I couldn't do that. I don't know if you could do that, but I sure as heck couldn't do that. Like I took a season and a half just to be halfway decent, not anywhere near that level. So. I mean, I hopefully I just like the hockey. I'm hoping for good series and good hockey, and that's what I'm cheering for. But yeah, Tampa's my pick.
Cool.
Okay, buddy.
How are they? How are those two organizations with the alumni aspect? That's something that I found interesting. Do they treat you guys pretty good still, Tampa or Colorado in that scenario? As one being part of the team, but especially I guess being a part of a championship team.
Yeah, I think. Well, Colorado, I haven't lived in Colorado for, since I played there, but, I've gone back and gotten tickets, and Tampa's been really good in the sense where, there's tickets if you want to go. And then we had the reunion, which was awesome. And they had all the guys in town and stuff. So, like Tampa, they've done a good job of taking care of not taking care, but, if you want to go to a game and bring your family, you're welcome to, and park wherever, and park in the back lot basically if you want. So Tampa does a really good job. But Colorado I can't speak to just because I haven't really been there in 20 years, whatever. But my old teammate Dave Reed reached out. He's like, "Yeah, we got to get a reunion going for Colorado." I said, "Get on it, buddy, Reeder. You're the perfect guy for organizing this stuff." He's like, "I'm on it. We haven't done one in Dallas either." So anyways, It's funny like how that works. So okay, buddy.
All right, man. Well, congrats on a great career. Congrats on the 2 cups. Awesome to share your story, and yeah, I'm glad we were able to get together. So thanks again for doing this, buddy.
Oh, no problem. Anytime. Sorry about the phone not working the odd time and beeping.
Yeah, hey, no worries. We'll figure it out. Thanks, man. Cheers.
Okay, talk to you.
Thanks so much for listening to the end. I really appreciate your audience. I really appreciate the support. I've been getting many touch points here through social media or through email saying, geez, the podcast means a lot. We were listening to every episode. And we have grown together either as a parent athlete scenario or athletes saying that they've been able to use the tools to help them in their career. So that's what it's all about, to grow the message and to grow the idea that this is a real thing. Mindset is it's strange because it's a bit of an intangible that is uncertain and an unknown, and especially for people who haven't played the sport. So hockey parents out there who are listening, who haven't gone through it, don't maybe understand the value or even what I'm talking about. And I, for one, as a player, didn't get it until I was well into my pro career and found out even more about the value of it afterwards. So as a junior athlete, I really didn't understand what was available to me. I didn't think that there was anything wrong in air quotes. So if there was nothing wrong, then why would I do anything to make it right? This is definitely not a topic that is a right or wrong topic, or you have it or you have not, that you need to be broken in order to visit this stuff. I was a victim of a fixed mindset in that scenario. I was a victim of thinking, well, there's nothing really to get better here. I've done great to date. Why would I do anything? Why would I spend time on this? So even of that approach, my own stance as a 19, 20, 21-year-old in the field of doing, personal work on the mind and mindset and approach and perspective, I had a fixed mindset with that. It was like, there's nothing wrong, so why would I try and get better? And that's the exact wrong approach. So if you are an athlete like I was that thought you had it all figured out, I don't mean to be rude, but you're wrong. You can always use more support. You can always use more development. And if you're an athlete who does have a hard time with anxiety or with negativity or with feeling like the victim or playing fearful and not finding these powerful states to play in, then this is a much more obvious dot to connect for you, and something that you should be considering, investing time in and investing in yourself, because it's going to make a massive difference for you on the ice and in all other aspects of your life. So thanks again for Chris for coming out. What a great story. I love how he talks about the person behind the player. One of his most memorable moments was a coach for the first time. He said, "Hey, how you doing?" Like that he cared about Chris as a person. and that makes a massive difference, and developing that person makes a massive difference. So if you are interested in working with me, if you are interested in what mindset can do for your game or for your player's game, your child's game, then please reach out, www.myhockey.com. It's a great time of year to be doing this. I'm recording this right now, and the end of June. We have July and August left before things really start heating up. And although we obviously can work on things during the season, I'm a big advocate of starting to ingrain some of these concepts and some of these fundamentals now, so you can start applying them now. So once the season rolls and training camp hits and the pressure's on the line, that you can use them. You can use them, and you're able to use them, and you're able to apply them to help you move forward and to help you take advantage of opportunities. So that can be available at upmyhockey.com. Again, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, Up My Hockey with Jason Podolin on YouTube. That would be appreciated. Or you can join the parent group if you haven't already. And look forward to working with you all in the future. And once again, Dinger, thanks for coming out and sharing your story. Play hard. Keep your head up.